Doesn't Dan Patrick remind you of Jim Lampley just a little bit? You need to check their family tree. But shout out to Dan Patrick. He did one of the most classy interviews I've seen ever. With who? With trainer Freddie Roach. Now, I've never been a big Freddie Roach guy when it came to training, but that's why I like reading biographies. That's about, I like to just read about people's lives and see what they've been through. Then you kind of understand why they are the way they are, or, why Freddie Roach does some of the things he does in the corner of certain fighters. But first of all, you learn that Freddie Roach was a tough guy. The things he went through, in his family life, and I'm only talking about that because he brought it up, or I usually stay out of outside stuff like that, but he brought it up. I don't know if he's writing a book, but Dan Patrick asked Freddie Roach how many street fights he had. He said around 300 to 400. I was like, man, I listened to Teddy Atlas's audio book, and he's a tough guy too, still is. And 300 to 400 street fights. He even talked about an incident where he was walking and a car pulled up with three guys, and he's like, I'm going to have to do something or else they may try to take me out. So he took the main guy, I guess, who was the biggest guy, wrestled him to the ground. And check this out. If you're kind of squeamish, you might want to hit mute for about maybe 20 seconds. So here it goes. He bit out the guy's eye. He said he bit out the guy's eye. He said he had some of his eyelashes stuck in his teeth. I don't think you want to mess with Freddie Roach. And Dan Patrick was like, so what happened to the other guys? He's like, they take off? He's like, oh yeah, they took off. I was like, you bit his eye out? Man, Freddie Roach. But Freddie Roach, he's been through some things. He had some heartwarming stories about his family. He talked about when him and Ali worked together. I think Ali came in his gym around, did they say 89 or something? And they were comparing notes about Parkinson's, because that Freddie Roach got diagnosed with Parkinson's. So they were comparing notes, and he was like, Ali, I noticed you don't shake when you hit the bag. He's like, nah, I don't shake when I train. And Freddie Roach is like, I don't shake when I hold the pad. So that was just an interesting conversation that they had, And I found out, too, that Freddie Roach was an alternate for the 76 Olympics, which had Sugar Ray Leonard, forget the others, but, he was working with. They showed some of his fight highlights, and he had injured his hand and it never came back. So he started working with the great Eddie Futch, who trained Riddick Bowe and had Larry Holmes, and I believe Joe Frazier. So he started working with him. And once his hand never came back, he started training. And they eventually split ways because some of the guys thought that Eddie Futch didn't have time for them. So they asked Freddie Roach to train them, and he stepped in. And then once the fight got nearer, he asked Eddie Futch, could I finish training them because we're getting so close to the fight? And Eddie wasn't cool with that. So he just went with the fighter because he thought it wouldn't be right for me to step away from the fighter this close to the fight. You got to stay on point all the way through. Years later, they made up. He went in there and apologized to Eddie if he had done anything wrong. Eddie's like, hey, man, we're cool. So that was a class act from one of the greatest trainers to ever do it, Eddie Futch. We got Emmanuel Stewart and Eddie Futch. Don't forget Eddie Futch. They were two class acts, two great trainers. But I listened to some of the things that I just had a mental, that Freddie Roach was talking about. I've seen enough Roaches in my day. I guess I should remember Freddie Roach. But he was talking about when he trained Oscar De La Hoya, and they couldn't find sparring for him for his weight. So there's this guy that weighed like 106. And he went in there and Oscar couldn't touch him. So when it was time, he thought that Oscar was too big to fight Pacquiao. But when it came time to fight Pacquiao, he remembered that Oscar couldn't touch this dude that was 106. So I believe he called up Bob Arum and was like, "Yeah, let's make the fight." Like, yeah, he remembered that Oscar couldn't get with that dude that was 106 because he kind of had a little beef after working with Oscar because when Oscar lost his fight to Floyd Mayweather, Freddie Roach said he told him, "Man, I can't win without you in my corner, this and that." And then the next day he fired him, and he didn't even fire him to his face. Uh, he had to read about it. So I was like, wow, kind of like reminds me what Coach James Bashir said. I believe Usyk and them fired him through email. I was like, wow, that's interesting. But he also said something interesting that I kind of compared to what people say about Anthony Joshua. He said when Freddie Roach was saying when Pacquiao got knocked out, after that he lost his killer instinct, and he said he was never the same after that. He just wanted to go be happy to win a 12-round decision. And he was trying to tell Pacquiao, like, that's not the right way to think. And he said they never spoke again after that. And he also said he didn't believe you could get it back. So I started thinking, people were saying that's what happened to Anthony Joshua in his first fight with Ruiz. After that, he became really cautious. But, I disagree with Freddie Roach on the fact that you can't get that back. It might take a couple of fights of the right trainer to put that confidence in you, but you can see that Joshua got it back the way he was so precise at taking out Otto Wylene. So I think you can get it back, but it depends, I guess, on the person and the trainer. And Freddie Roach was also talking about when Mike Tyson came to him. Mike said, he needed to develop his right hand. I guess he was, mainly knocking people out with the left. So what he did with Mike Tyson was he said he would just have him, like when they were eating, he said he would just have him use his right hand to eat. I don't think I knew Mike Tyson was a lefty naturally. But he also said Oscar was a natural lefty. That's why when he jabbed, his power arm was so strong because he was a lefty. But he said he would have Mike Tyson eat with his right hand and, I guess probably do other things, probably tried to write, I don't know. But, if you constantly using that right, you get more used to using it in the ring. So they showed when Mike Tyson went in there against Cliff ATN, knocked him out with the right. He got comfortable using the right. And I remember, I think Don King was even clowning Cliff ATN for that fight because he got knocked down and took out his own mouthpiece like, man, I'm done. Like, who does that? Who takes out their own mouthpiece? Like, he ain't even trying to get up. I remember that fight well. But, yeah, I just learned a lot listening to Freddie Roach. And like I said, he had some heartwarming stories about his family I'm sure it'll hit you in the heartstrings when you listen to it. It was a great interview by Dan Patrick. And I like how Dan Patrick told Freddie Roach, "You're a good son." The way he took care of his mother, you gotta respect that. You have to respect that. So applause to Freddie Roach for that and the hardships. He had a tough dad, man. Towards the end of his career, he started to fade when Freddie Roach was boxing. And his dad told him at the end of the fight, how did you go from so good to the tail end of your career? You're so terrible. And he kind of let his dad have it verbally after that. I'm not going to say what he said, but yeah, he had enough of his dad. I guess, sometimes unsolicited advice isn't wanted at all. You know what I mean? I'm trying to think. It was such a great interview. It was about 55 minutes. I'm probably missing something, but he talked about Pacquiao, Mike Tyson, his boxing career, working with Eddie Futch. They even showed some of the highlights that I had never actually seen Freddie Roach in the ring. He really had skills, and his street fights made him tough, kind of prepared him mentally. and the things he had gone through with his family kind of made him prepared mentally too for what he would face in the ring, you know. Um, yeah, it's just a real great interview. Go check it out. Dan Patrick, I believe I think somewhere in there he's related to Jim Lampley somehow. They almost even sound alike. But Freddie Roach, oh yeah, I found out he used to do some telemarketing too under, I think, a name, something like Joe Davis. So he would work that during the day and then go train fighters. After his boxing career, he said he turned into an alcoholic, and he said Eddie Foote saved his life by asking him to come train. So he thought, I can't tell my fighters and them not to drink if I'm drinking. So he stopped drinking, got real disciplined, and, look at all the fighters he's had in his stable. And he has a crowded gym. They were talking about all the celebrities that come in there: Sylvester Stallone, Arnold Schwarzenegger. It's just a lot. Oh, and a thing I mentioned a long time ago, the thing I found funny about Freddie Roach, which should have told me how tough he was back then. He was talking about one time, he used to work with James Toney, and James Toney, I guess, wanted to fight him at one point. So Freddie Roach said, you might win, but you'll know you were in a fight. You gotta love that. You gotta love that. It's like, you might beat me down, but you're gonna come out needing some stitches yourself. Freddie Roach, man, tough guy, and he wasn't even in the weight class of James Toney at that point. So yeah, go check out the interview. Anyway, it's the J. Roos Theory. If you wish to donate to the platform, my Cash App is $JRoos33. LSR forever. And be fearless. Yay.